In today's video, I'm going to discuss my experience with short and longer fasts. What's shakin' bacon? My name's Bruno Panucci, and we're going to skip the update that I normally go through in the beginning of each episode, and I'm going to discuss my experience with fasting. Let's just get right into it. So back in about 2002, I started working at a naturopathic office as a registered massage therapist, and they had a book on fasting there. I thought it always looked interesting. I saw it on the shelf every single day. I ended up picking it up and reading it, and I did that because a couple of my friends had tried fasting for about 2 or 3 weeks. So just to be clear, anytime I talk about fasting in this video, it's regarding water fasting. So back to the story. When they were doing this after about 3 weeks, they talked about how great they felt, but they were also talking about some very concerning side effects they were getting and how after a while their urine started turning clear. And then after a while, after that, their urine got really dark and then it got syrupy in its consistency. And I thought that was really weird. I thought, what is wrong with you guys? Why would you do that? That is so ridiculous. That original book was called The Miracle of Fasting, and it was written by a naturopathic doctor who was also a PhD. And there was a lot more anecdotal evidence throughout the whole book. But in about the mid-2010s, Dr. Fung came out with a book on intermittent fasting, and it was a huge success. He already came off, I believe, his success with the obesity code, and that book was more clinically based with trials. As far as that book went, I wasn't a big fan of Dr. Fung's book. He cut up every other style of eating that's out there, and some of those things do work. Calorie counting, as much as I'm not a big fan of it, works for some people. Multiple meals a day works for a lot of people, and bodybuilders and powerlifters, anyone who's got their goal to build up their metabolism and put on a lot of lean mass and bone density, they have multiple meals every day. Now, you can maintain a great physique with intermittent fasting, but to get a good physique, you have to eat, and eat. One of the biggest frustrations I had with his book is numerous times in his book, as well as in different interviews I've seen with him, he will go on and on about how it's not about calories. Calories in and calories out doesn't matter. And he says it in a bit of a condescending tone. And then he'll turn around and discuss about how it's all about hormones. And it has nothing to do with calories. It's all about hormones. And we want to balance our blood sugars, to balance our insulin, to balance the rest of our hormones so that we can access our fat. And every now and then, he would pipe up and say, but you still got to pay attention to calories. It's like, look, man, which is it? It's one or the other. You can't argue one doesn't work. You have to do it the other way. And then turn around and say, yeah, but you got to still pay attention to the other one. For some people, it might be more about hormones. For some people, it might be more about calories. Everyone's different. Intermittent fasting did virtually nothing for me as far as weight loss went in any way, shape, or form. But I did have some benefits to it. So in my experience, I first started fasting in 2016. Now, when I first did it, I wasn't paying attention to my diet. I was having whatever I wanted, anything I wanted, and quite a bit of it was junk food. What I noticed from this fasting, I was doing 24-hour fasts, and I had done very little research on it by this point. I'd only read that book over 10 or 15 years before. I hadn't yet read The Complete Guide to Fasting by Dr. Fung. What I was doing was going long stretches of time without any food, and I got up to about a day at a time. And what I found was, in that day, I was getting to the point where I was just thinking about food all the time. I couldn't wait till my next meal. I was ready to order pizza. I was getting ice cream. I was getting cake. After a while, I realized I was going for calorically dense food, probably instinctively, because I was trying to balance out the fact that I was starving myself for a whole day, and I was obsessing about food all the time. That did not work out for me. I did that for about a month or two. Now, most of the food I ate was junk food, but I didn't put on a pound or an inch. So I did think that was quite interesting. But in 2018, I read Dr. Fung's book. I actually read it a couple times and also listened to it in an audiobook format, because something like that, I want to make sure I really have the difficult areas reinforced. I listened to certain sections of it over and over again because I really wanted to reinforce those sections, because some of them are quite important. Some of it had to do with some studies. Some of it had to do with the mentality or the different things you should pay attention to. But nonetheless, I gave it a shot, and I was already doing a carnivore diet by this point. What I found was that first time around when I had carbohydrates in my diet, it was horribly difficult. And I was talking about a 24-hour fast. When I did this carnivore diet, it was easy. It was easy to fast. I would eat once a day and I wouldn't think about it. And so I was doing this already for quite a while. And I'd gotten to the point where I was eating multiple times a day when I first started carnivore, to eventually 3 times a day and then twice a day. And then to the point where I was comfortably eating once a day. Now I was having a lot of food in that one sitting, but I was eating just once a day. After a while, I was doing 2-day fasts. And it was interesting. Once I started experimenting with this, I would do 2 days. So I would start on a Monday, I would carry it through right till the end of Tuesday, and Wednesday morning I would eat all day Wednesday, and I would have a strict carnivore diet. And then I was like, okay, that felt good. I'm going to do it Thursday and Friday. And I did that for 2 weeks. I felt good each time. I wasn't obsessed about food. It didn't bother me at all. I felt fine. I wasn't hungry really at all. Because when you're not going through carbohydrate withdrawal and your blood sugar is managed and you're in ketosis, it's easier to do that type of fasting. After a couple of weeks of doing that, I switched to 3-day fasts. So I would do Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, have something on Wednesday, and then do it again Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Now, the reason why I was doing this was a friend of mine told me he had already gotten up to 3-day fast. And he said when you get to a 3-day mark, the mental clarity is through the roof. He said he physically felt amazing too. Now, he did lots of public talks, and he was really blown away at how well it affected him doing his public talks. So I thought, that's interesting. That really piqued my curiosity because I had heard that from other people, and I wanted to experience it for myself. There's no better way to learn than trying it for yourself, because even if it works for someone else or it's a disaster for someone else, you have to see how it affects you, right? And if you're genuinely curious enough to try it, do your research and give it a shot. Be cautious about it. On that 3-day window, I noticed I felt amazing. I truly felt amazing. I felt like I was a teenager again. I had this mental clarity that was through the roof, and my joints were incredibly loose. I could bounce from foot to foot really fast. My walk got much faster. My balance got better. I could stand on one foot and raise my other knee up to my chest and tie my shoe. Now, keep in mind, I was close to 400 pounds when I was doing this. So I had the balance I once had when I was a teenager. I thought, how could that be? Well, maybe if I have less inflammation in my joints, maybe my joints are just more able to do their job. My walk got so much faster. At any point, you know, when you're walking down a hallway, you're going to get into this tight spot because someone's walking towards you and you're like, oh, it's going to get kind of tight and you got to kind of turn sideways or something like that. So you want to kind of hurry up and pass the section that is open a little bit more. I could speed up my walk like I just hit another gear in a car where you just kind of go. I was taken back at how fast my movement was. My coordination felt like it was through the roof again. And I honestly hadn't felt like that since I was 18 or 19 years old, when I was at my thinnest and I felt just really good. Here's the interesting thing about that. So those are my good experiences. I talked to my doctor as to why that was, because he's a big fan of intermittent fasting. My doctor said, what's happening is that blood that's usually busy working in your digestive system is freed up to do everything else it needs to do in the body. I thought, yeah, that makes sense. You know, the rest of your body has more blood to do its job. It's probably the closest you could get to blood doping when you think about it. Blood doping is something you can do to increase your performance. You basically take blood out of your body, and then later on, before your actual event, you put it back in your body and you have extra blood and extra oxygen to do the job. So it's a bit of like an overdrive drug, but it's not for everyone. Now, I felt good, and I eventually went up to 4-day fasts and then 5-day fasts, and I had to stop at a 5-day fast because I started to get that keto breath. So because of my work, I'm in a confined room with someone for about an hour, usually like an 8x10 room. They might not notice it right away, but I was like, what is that smell? And it was that acetone smell, and I was like, is that me? And sure enough, I got the receptionist to come in afterwards, and I was like, hey, do you smell that? And she was like, yes, I do. And I was like, is that me? And she leaned in and went, yep, it's you. I was like, oh my God, is it like really bad? She goes, no, it's not bad. It's like a lemony acetone smell. It's like a citrus acetone. Now, I knew her from high school, so we had a comfort level with each other, so I could ask her such a weird question. And she was like, no, it's not bad, but you can notice it as soon as you walk in the room. So I was like, okay, I got to stop this. So I went next door and I quickly grabbed some chicken from the restaurant just to get something in my system to pop me out of ketosis. And I went back to doing 3-day fasts. So here's the negatives from doing all this fasting. I did all that fasting in about a 2-month window. And then I would break each fast with wings or beef. And then the next day I'd go into my fast. Here's what I noticed. When I went back to eating food, my joints felt horrible again. It was like I hit a wall. I enjoyed feeling so good at that 3-day window that when I went back to how I normally felt, even on a carnivore diet, my joints felt creaky and stiff, and I lost that balance and I lost that speed in my walk, and I didn't enjoy it. And it got to the point where I was not looking forward to eating again. And that's a serious issue because that's an easy way to start developing an eating disorder. The problem with intermittent fasting is I have hypothyroidism. It's a strain on the thyroid to do intermittent fasting. So you should really enter something like this with caution if you have hypothyroidism or any thyroid problem. Now, I also suffered from gout at the time. If you have uric acid issues, that's a kidney issue. If you have a gout problem, that's because the kidneys can't flush out the uric acid. So your body wants to flush out the ketones and puts them as a priority and backs up the uric acid in the body. So it can kind of do one or the other, but not both too well. It made me really prone to gout attacks. Even though my body felt good, my toe was often killing me. So I gotta say there were some benefits, but there are also drawbacks. Here's the crazy drawback. Think about how little food I ate. What did I eat? Maybe 7 or 8 days worth of food in 2 months? Think about that. I had, in that 2-month window, doing those fasts, 2 weeks of 48-hour fasts, 2 weeks of 3-day fasts, and then 4 and 5-day fasts. I didn't lose an inch or a pound doing that. Think about that. I should have lost one or the other. And I didn't do it to lose weight. I was doing it just to experiment. I wanted to see how it felt. Now, I really enjoyed doing carnivore at the time. Think about that. If you only eat 8 or 9 days worth of food in a 2-month window, you should lose some weight. Like I said, even inches, even if I don't lose weight, but I lose inches, something should have changed, and nothing changed. And it took me actually a month or two afterwards before I realized that. I thought, wait a minute. I did that for all that time and I didn't lose anything. So that's when I thought, okay, there's something wrong here, because it was once I got into that 5-day fast that I was getting into ketosis. So it shows how far gone my body was. But at the same time, I was already fat adapted going into this. So I should have been in ketosis to begin with. So this was really peculiar. And because of the strain on my thyroid, it didn't do me any favors. When I do a regular carnivore diet, aside from this challenge I'm doing this month and next month, typically I end up eating twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, because maybe I've done a workout that was a little more intense. And so I decide to eat a little bit more food because I listen to my body. When I'm hungry, I eat. But typically I'm eating twice a day, sometimes only once a day, but typically twice. The one thing I noticed with these longer fasts when I was getting into these 3, 4, and 5-day fasts was I could get into that amazing feeling that you normally hit at the 3-day level at 2.5 days, and then 2 days. And then by the end of the second day, I was feeling these benefits, and I thought, wow, like this is pretty cool. But it was definitely undone every time I ate. And when I ate, I felt horrible because I was feeling so good. The contrast was noticeable. As good as you feel going from a standard American diet, or in my case, a crappy standard American diet, which is already a crappy version of a crappy diet, to a clean zero carb diet, and I felt amazing. And a zero carb diet combined with intermittent fasting made me feel amazing as well. I don't think it's for everyone, and I don't do that anymore. And the reason why I don't do it is I believe in fueling your body. So it's like I've come full circle in all my research through the years that I've accumulated, both professionally trained as well as my personal research I've done through the years keeping up on nutrition. I feel that you need to fuel your body. Now, if someone wants to do a fast every now and then, I think that's great. I may do it the odd time in the future, but for the most part, I enjoy eating and I enjoy keeping my body fueled. In conclusion, when you have a car that's not really running well, you don't run a watered down solution through the engine. You give it better quality fuel, don't you? You give your car higher quality fuel by giving it an oil treatment as well as an additive to the gas, and maybe even something to clean the carburetor. Now, I'm not a car guy, so I'm starting to get out of my depth here. But what happens is your car works better because you've upped the quality of the fuel. You haven't watered it down. So that same thing applies to us. You know, it's nice to know you can fast if you need to. I know if anything ever happened, in a worst case scenario, if I ever had to go a few days without food, I could handle it. It's a kind of neat thing to learn about yourself in case of an emergency. Back in 2004, I think it was, we had a huge blackout in Ontario. It lasted almost a week. People didn't have power for 2 or 3 days, and then they started giving the power back in cycles depending on your postal code because they wanted to make sure everyone got some power to keep their freezers going. And there were a lot of blackout babies that came 9 months later. But what happened was, in that time frame, people had to really start thinking about, oh man, what are we going to do? I have to make sure I charge my phone and get some battery backups and maybe a generator for my place because I have to keep this going or that going. And everyone really focused on taking care of themselves. And of course, in situations like that, food can be an issue. Look what happened with COVID, right? Grocery stores were cleared out for like the first week or two of certain items. And imagine if that would happen to food. And imagine being a carnivore and all of a sudden your food supply gets wiped out. Basically, I understand why people would want to try this. And some things you have to experience to learn if it works for you or maybe if it doesn't work for you. I get that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I hope to talk to you again soon. Take care.